Introduction. Life doesn't begin 20 pounds from now. Jessica Weiner, best-selling author and speaker. Every woman I've ever known who struggles with being overweight wishes deep down in her heart that she could love and accept her body and stop talking the language of fat. No matter what her age or size, she hopes that one day she'll be able to stop arguing with her thighs, stomach, breasts, or whatever particular wobbly bits on her she despises most. Your thoughts are making you fat! First and foremost, this is not a diet book. It is intended to give you tools to help heal your broken relationship with food and to understand the root of this dysfunction, your thoughts. If you're an emotional eater struggling with excess weight, food has had the upper hand for a long time. No diet will ever fix that. If you're uncomfortable with who you are and how you look, it's not the fat on your body that needs to be addressed. It's the fat in your head. Your thoughts are making you fat. Hi, I'm Andrea Amador, professional coach, body image, self-esteem expert, and former dieter turned juicy woman. As a curvy, plus-size gal myself, I've learned that people are not limited by their bodies, only their minds. Author Jack Canfield says it best. It doesn't matter what you say to me. What's important is what I tell myself after you finish speaking. Like so many women, I used to swear on a stack of Bibles that one day my life would be perfect when I lost weight. I spent years waiting and hoping to become perfect, always believing that a diet was the solution to all my problems. But even after I achieved my goal weight, I was still miserable, always obsessing and never happy with myself or my body. As much as I tried, I just couldn't stop thinking about food. Within 5 years, I had regained all the weight back again. Deeply ashamed, disgusted with my body, and hating myself, I attributed my failure in weight loss to weakness and lack of self-control. I searched desperately for a solution. My mindset at the time was that I was miserable because I had fat thighs. Then, one day during my coach training, I came to the sober realization that it was actually the hateful and toxic thoughts I had about myself and my body that kept me in patterns of overeating and self-abuse. It was then that I finally realized that my overweight thighs were my body's way of screaming out for help, begging to be loved and accepted. Until I began to love myself, thighs and all, I didn't have a hope in hell of ever being able to get my emotional eating under control. After 33 years of procrastinating and living a life bound by my food fear, I decided to stop dieting. My whole world changed. I wrote this book to encourage you to live and love your body now, because as long as you continue to hate yourself, food will forever enslave you. My lifelong battle with food began in 1970. I was 8 years old and lived with my parents, Frank and Doris, and my 3-year-old brother, David. We lived in New York City in the Washington Heights section of Manhattan. As far as I knew, I had it all. I lived in a beautiful, big apartment building in a place called Castle Village. We had a doorman and a garden right downstairs. I had plenty of toys, tons of friends, and my Nana and Grandpa were just an elevator ride away, living on the top floor in the penthouse. Life was good. Then my parents divorced. Mom took my brother and I, and we went to live in a cramped little apartment not too far away. I was heartbroken, missing my dad so much. I still got to see him, but it wasn't the same. Soon thereafter, my mother remarried a man named George, who after a few short months of acting like Prince Charming, quickly turned into a toad. He was an abusive, rageful alcoholic with a jealous and mean streak a mile wide. but my mother was completely under his spell. To appease George, we ended up moving to Florida where his family lived. Living in Miami seemed as distant from my dad as I could ever be. And as happens to far too many innocent children, I was sexually abused. No gruesome details, I promise. Suffice it to say that those years were probably the most miserable time of my life. Because I didn't have any other way of dealing with my pain, I used food to protect me. It was my way of trying to build a wall around me in an attempt to keep myself safe. When I was 11 years old, I finally came back to New York to live with my father and his fiancée, Rosie. Dad was shocked when he first saw me. I had gained 30 pounds in less than a year, and nobody but I knew why. He rushed me to the doctor to see if everything was okay. That was when I was put on my first diet. To my immature way of thinking, it seemed that all of a sudden I was cursed by the fat fairy and given this enormous set of thighs, which became the object of everyone's concern. For the next several years, Dad and Rosie did everything they could to help me get control over food. But the more I was told I couldn't or shouldn't be eating something, the more I wanted it. My dad used to say, "Andrea, you're too damn fat, and you have no self-control around food." That was really when I started hating my body. People kept saying that if I wanted to lose weight and be pretty, I had to learn to control my appetite. But the more people tried to stop me from eating certain foods, the more I wanted them, and the more desperate I became to get them. Let me ask you a question. When you were a kid, did you ever sneak eat? I did, lots of times. I remember so many nights when I would wait patiently in bed, listening for sounds telling me that everybody was sleeping and the coast was clear. As soon as I could hear Dad's snores, I knew it was safe to make my move. Like a thief in the night, I'd peel back the covers, rise up out of the bed, and tiptoe toward the kitchen, being so careful, trying not to make a sound. Damn those squeaky floorboards! If I heard a noise, I'd freeze dead in my tracks and wait, holding my breath and listening until it was safe to continue. Once I got to the kitchen, I'd crack open the refrigerator door just enough so I could see what I was doing, but nobody would be woken up by the light. Then, just like a little squirrel gathering nuts, I stuffed as much food as I could in my pajamas and filled both pockets of my fuzzy pink bathrobe. Quickly and quietly, I retraced the steps back to my room. I crawled into bed and with a flashlight under my covers, emptied my pockets and quietly started the process of peeling, opening, pulling, sucking, chewing, and consuming all my goodies. They were all mine. The cookies, pieces of cheese and meat, canned pudding, frozen donuts, cold Chinese takeaway, and all sorts of foods I wasn't allowed to have on my diet. From that experience and many others like it, I believed for the next 35 years that I was out of control around food. This belief caused me to be deeply ashamed of myself. In an effort to tame what I thought was the voracious feast beast lurking inside of me, I kept on riding the diet roller coaster, pinning all my hopes on the dream that one day I would lose weight and become thin and beautiful. Now that I look back on those years spent dieting, I realized that diets confirmed my belief that I couldn't trust myself around food. Diets gave me the message time and time again that I was fighting an addiction and had no self-control. I believed that foods I loved were off limits. Food like fatty steak, potato chips, bacon, sausages, bagels, French fries, chocolate cupcakes, ring dings and yodels, cookies, cakes, pies and soda, buttered popcorn, and even my Nana's famous homemade pasta. These foods came to be considered as the fattening or bad foods, and for me to eat them or even want them meant I was undisciplined and out of control. But despite feeling shameful for craving those yummy goodies, my desire for them led me around by the nose. Cheating on my diet made me feel like a criminal, although my only crime was one of passionately wanting food I was told I couldn't have. I lived in constant shame, torn by guilt and self-loathing. The ripple effect of how that shaped my life still continues to amaze me today, and it's the reason why I'm writing this book and sharing what I've learned with you. For years, I cursed myself and my weakness, blaming all my problems on the size of my thighs. Now I know my thighs and my eating were never the real problem. They were only a cover-up, a big fat lie that everyone wanted me to believe to keep me on a diet. It worked for a long time because most of my adult life, I was completely fooled into thinking I was miserable because I had fat thighs. I never considered the possibility that I had fat thighs because I was miserable. Up until several years ago, when I decided to stop dieting, I swore I couldn't feel safe around an open bag of potato chips, a plate of freshly made brownies, or a steaming bowl of pasta. But now I know I can, and you can too. I'll just bet you don't believe it. Maybe, like me, you've been raised to believe the problem is you, and there's something wrong with you. Nothing could be further from the truth. What stories are you telling yourself? What things have you been saying to your body? What feelings do you get every time you look in the mirror? The nasty things you say to yourself don't just stay in your head. Your thoughts are energy, an integral part of the universe, and each thought has its own ability to affect the world, and most importantly, you and your body. As we go on, I'll explain to you how your thoughts, specifically your negative self-talk, can make you fat. Can you relate to my story? Do you feel tortured, twisted, and desperately worn out by your relationship with food? Are you sick and tired of hating your body? If you are overweight, unhappy, struggling with a low self-image, and suffering from feelings of shame and guilt, you may often find yourself using food to comfort you. Don't blame yourself. You're not alone in your struggles, and your challenges definitely do not make you a bad person. You're only doing what your body has done before to make you feel safe, eating. It's been your way of taking care of yourself, and there's no shame in that. However, if you're no longer willing to allow food to enslave you, it's not time for a new diet. It's time for a change. Diets, by their very nature, support a negative self-image, pushing you to believe that something is wrong with you. They guide you toward disconnecting and distrusting your body's internal wisdom. As a child, you took in information like a sponge and believed everything you heard. This became your story. Now, as an adult, you have the opportunity to doubt the lies you've been told, to question limiting beliefs and create a new foundation upon which to live. You can return to trusting yourself, and that's what you need to do to restore harmony and balance in your relationship with food and your body. To tune into that wisdom, you have to go within. Your journey begins with a spoonful of self-acceptance. By learning to welcome and fully accept the good, the bad, the ugly, flab, wrinkles, bumps, and all, everything becomes possible. Resistance melts away. The challenge is that you can only love yourself, make friends with food, and accept your body if you're willing to stop playing the role of victim. Are you? If you are, then I'm ready to teach you everything I know. Come, follow me and I'll show you how to bust loose from the poor little me, ain't I helpless game. Reclaim your life and love the skin you're in. Now, today. Turn the page and let's get started. Chapter 1. Getting reacquainted with your body. Every extra pound you carry on your body equals a pound of emotional pain you're carrying in your heart. Doreen Virtue, Ph.D., Losing Your Pounds of Pain, Breaking the Link Between Abuse, Stress, and Overeating. We've all seen those diet commercials where a beautiful, happy, slender woman is talking about her weight loss success as she stands beside a life-size photo of herself before she started her diet. In the photo, she looks sad and miserable. She looks at her before photo with disgust and disdain and pushes it away out of sight, showing that she has no feeling or connection to that picture. Despite having felt that way in the past about myself, now seeing those commercials just makes me want to cry. Come on, fess up. Are you waiting to become thin for your life to begin? Think about it. Haven't you believed dieting was temporary, something you just kind of had to grin and bear until the day came when you were finally thinner and then the real you could come out and play? Juicy Woman Note. I used to think the time I spent losing weight was like living in a vacuum. It didn't really count, I reasoned, because I was waiting until I reached my goal weight. Now, I understand that I was living my life in a holding pattern. I wouldn't buy new clothes because I didn't want to waste my money. I wouldn't go dancing because I didn't want people to see me shaking my fat. I wouldn't want to make love with my husband because I wanted to have that beautiful thin stomach and strong, tight, toned legs. So I waited. I was in a perpetual state of waiting. Waiting. W-E-I-G-H-T-I-N-G. How about you? What have you been waiting for? In our pluck and tuck, thin as in, beauty in a bottle culture, we've come to devalue the person in favor of the packaging. The photos of models and celebrities you see plastered all over magazines have been retouched. Their flaws have been taken out. Yet in our endless pursuit of perfection, we still yearn to look like them. The truth is, none of us are perfect. We all have our flaws, and to accept them means we have the power to rise above them. The importance of accepting the before you to make way for the after you. If you've been a dieter and lost weight, or even if you've just tried to watch what you eat and develop healthier habits, you know how it really works in those silly commercials. It was that before woman who got the smiling, thin woman to the place where she could actually enjoy her after life. It was the before woman who dragged her butt out of bed every day to go to the gym or go walking when she didn't want to. It was the before woman who had to say no to the cookies and the ice cream and any other food she wanted. It was the before woman who did all the work. And then the after woman has the nerve to shun her and dismiss her like she's a piece of dirt. You would never treat someone else like dirt, would you? Yet if you've been shunning yourself, waiting for that after you to make her appearance, that's just what you've been doing to yourself. I used to do the same thing. It made losing weight and keeping it off seem like the impossible dream. No matter how hard I tried, it never seemed like enough, and I always pushed myself to achieve more. In order to mold myself into what I considered the perfect body, I was meaner to myself than anyone else could ever be. My desire to lose weight became a compulsion that eventually took over my life, made me miserable, and eclipsed my soul, the best part of me. No more dieting for me! Several years ago, my life took a radical turn when I decided to stop dieting. Besides wanting to do it for my own reasons, it had become apparent that I had to make the change for the health and well-being of my daughter. At the time, Kara was 10 years old. She was steadily gaining weight and showing signs of being an emotional eater. Oblivious and not really knowing what to do to help her, I was beginning to repeat the same desperately ignorant parenting mistakes my father had made. I, too, had become a hypocritical role model, espousing healthy eating one moment and binging whenever anyone's back was turned. As a woman with my own disordered relationship with food, I realized I was the worst role model for Kara. Desperate to get her eating under control, I watched her like a hawk, made backhanded comments about her weight, criticized her every food choice, obsessed over everything she ate, and in general, began to lose sight of my precious girl. It was killing our relationship, and she was starting to hate me. After seeing how the legacy of my tortured, twisted thinking and dysfunctional eating was affecting her, I knew that if I didn't stop this runaway train, Kara would end up like me, fat, perpetually unhappy with herself and hating her body. I couldn't live with the idea of doing that to my daughter. That was when I realized that diets were a big part of the problem. Sarcasm, criticism, and meanness were the only ways I knew how to talk to myself. I used these same desperate attempts at communication with my daughter, which was toxic to our relationship. Our closeness was being destroyed. In order to help her regain her sense of balance and comfort around food, I had to first help myself. Deep down in my heart, I knew that as much as I wanted to help Kara find her way to peace in her relationship with food, I couldn't, because I was cluelessly lost myself. I vowed to find the answers for both of us and prayed for help so we could begin our healing. Soon afterward, the universe sent me a gift, Dr. Harold Frost. I met and befriended Doc Frost in an online networking group. Doc was in the process of retiring from a successful 25-year career as a therapist and co-founder of an eating disorder clinic in the Midwest. He wanted to share his experiences by writing a book, and I offered to help him by giving him feedback on his writing. He eagerly accepted and explained to me his work with women who had eating disorders. Hearing him speak of his patients and their struggles with such tenderness and care, I instinctively knew I could trust Doc. I confided in him and shared my story, asking for his help and guidance. He explained to me that in order to change the way my daughter related to food and to her body, I had to challenge many of the limiting beliefs and assumptions I had about food and my body. Doc said that as a dieter, I had learned to fear food and think of my hunger and my body as the enemies. This had set up an unnatural relationship with food and kept me hating my body. As long as I lived with the dieter's all-or-nothing mentality, I would always end up craving foods that I thought I shouldn't eat. When I reached the point where I couldn't stand denying myself a moment longer, I would give in and binge. My associations with guilt, fear, and shame around food, combined with bad feelings about my body, kept me in an endless cycle of binging and dieting. Doc offered to teach me an alternative to dieting, a non-diet weight control method called intuitive eating. Making the decision to stop dieting terrified me. I saw it as the ultimate form of giving up. As much as I hated dieting, it was the only way I knew to control my voracious appetite. I figured if I ever began eating without being restricted by a diet, I'd never stop. Doc assured me this wasn't true. At that time, in July of 2006, American Idol contestant Katharine McPhee shared her eating addiction story with People magazine. She talked about her amazing recovery using a process called intuitive eating. In reading the article, I discovered she had lost 30 pounds eating all the food she loved. That got my attention. Doc then sent me an audio tape of his entitled Loving the Child Within. He said I should learn about intuitive eating by listening to the stories of his former patients. One such story was of a woman named Megan. On the tape, Megan spoke of the abusive and chaotic atmosphere in which she was raised as a child. When I listened to her, I knew I had found someone to whom I could relate. Like me, she had spent most of her life trying to disconnect from her painful past by using food to numb her emotions. Megan described how her work with Doc had changed the way she dealt with food. He had helped her heal much of her rage, and she had developed a new appreciation for her body. I realized that if she could heal her broken relationship with food and with her body, then maybe I could too. From that moment on, I decided to have faith. Faith that just like Megan and Catherine McPhee, my body's inner wisdom would effortlessly and naturally guide me back to my natural size. Along the years, I've learned that along with using the non-diet process of intuitive eating, you have to love and accept yourself in order to finally make peace with food. If you can't find compassion for the vulnerable parts of you, you'll continue to unconsciously abuse yourself by overeating. Juicy Woman note: can't stop eating? Think of it as valuable information telling you something is wrong. Just like a tiger with a thorn in its paw, something is causing you pain. Overeating is a symptom, it's not the problem. As long as you continue to do the same things, you'll get the same results. To change how you feel, you have to be willing to do things differently. I've learned that when you remove anxiety in your life by coping with your stress, you will stop hating yourself. Unless you handle what's bugging you, your stress will only keep you running round in circles, making you feel hopeless and helpless. You're not. But unless you deal with the bugging yous in your life, you won't ever believe it. The point is, you can't combine liver and onions and expect to get an apple pie. The body you have today is the result of the thoughts you've been feeding it. Your body is a snapshot reflecting what you have believed to be true. It's the result of the combination of years of beliefs and actions and inactions that have brought you to this place, hating your body. If, like me, you've grown a healthy pair of thighs or a big butt, it's probably evidence of believing what you've been told. The good news is, these beliefs aren't permanent and you can change them. Your thoughts are powerful ingredients that mold your life and ultimately determine your success. By changing them, you change your results. The truth is, we do so many things in life without consciously thinking about them. Whether you know it or not, your subconscious mind is always at work behind the scenes. Hardwired to your survival instinct, its intention is to keep you safe and in your comfort zone. Although what your subconscious mind is telling you may not be the least bit comfortable, it's what you know. Fear of the unknown is what prevents most of us from changing our lives. The thing to keep in mind is that there are perfectly good reasons for why your body is overweight. And until you begin to go within and find out what emotional needs your excess weight is fulfilling, you will stay within your comfort zone and continue in patterns that will keep you fat. Think of your beliefs as the foundation upon which you base all your life choices. Your beliefs develop from years of other people dumping their rules, assumptions, and interpretations about how the world works on your mental doorstep. This colors your world and becomes the filter through which you see your life. The stilted view then becomes your comfort zone. As a child, you were expected to take everything you learned at face value. At that age, you didn't have a voice or a choice. But now you do. You've probably heard the saying, too many cooks spoil the broth. It's true. Think about your beliefs as being contributions from different cooks in your life. People who wanted to make an impression on you. Parents, teachers, society, the media. Other people's beliefs had a direct effect on you and your relationship to food. If those unwanted limiting beliefs you've been carrying around are not giving you the results you want, then it's time to change the recipe. Just because things have been done the same way forever doesn't mean you can't switch them around now. You can, and I'll help you do it. Food. What does it really mean to you? Like me, you probably also picked up the belief along the way that you couldn't trust yourself. You had to rely on the wisdom of others to get by. Maybe you also believed that the world wasn't a safe place. But you could always rely on food to make you feel good. No matter what route you took to reach a place of disordered eating, it affected you and your relationship with your body. The outcome was that food became more important to you than it really is. Food became a source of comfort, a means of expressing your identity. It gave you a sense of having control in an uncontrollable situation. It became a way of saying, it's mine and you can't take it away from me. Now, realistically speaking, food doesn't have this kind of superpower because, after all, it's only food. Logically, food is only a means of filling a hungry tummy. But if you've been struggling with emotional eating, you've attached more meaning to it than it deserves. If that's the case, then it's not really the food you're after, but the feelings you get from eating it. In other words, in your pursuit of trying to recreate that one-time experience of some kind of wonderful, you've been eating a bunch of blah or a ton of just plain terrible. If you've watched your weight for any length of time, you've learned to think like a dieter. The dieter's fear of food thinking comes from years and years of being told you have to do whatever you can to control your hunger and avoid eating what you want, so that you can one day be happy, thin, and beautiful. The problem is, it's been found that diets don't work for up to 98% of all people because they don't help you deal with the emotions that push you to eat when you're not hungry. But I will. First, you have to keep this important truth in mind. Losing weight does not guarantee happiness. It's not what you're eating, it's what's eating you. I began dieting when I was 11 years old. For nearly 33 of my 48 years, I was an on-again, off-again member of Weight Watchers. In September 2001, I finally achieved what I considered my goal weight. I felt strong and healthy. At 5'2", I was a size 8, had a perfect hourglass figure, and when I wasn't obsessed with hating my thighs, I grew to love my heart-shaped butt. I weighed 162 pounds. Working out all the time, my body was tight and toned. The gals at Weight Watchers suggested I continue to slim down until I reached a lower, more appropriate weight, 110 to 125 pounds. Despite their recommendations, I decided that I was finally okay with my body, and I chose to stop losing weight. With a note from my doctor, I began to work on weight maintenance. Now, I thought life would settle into a picture of perfection once I got down to my ideal size, but it didn't happen that way. I still had big trust issues that prevented me from feeling safe, receiving love, expressing myself, setting boundaries, asking for what I needed, feeling worthy, being independent, feeling confident, speaking out, and so many other things that I thought would magically resolve themselves once I lost weight. Life just didn't settle into the image of peace and ease that I expected. Instead, after I lost the weight, it became a daily struggle to keep it off. I lived in constant fear of gaining the weight back and not fitting into the clothes that I loved. I couldn't seem to relax around food without a pile of guilt and shame heaped on top of every single extra morsel I ate over my allotted food that day. If you've been among those who were lucky enough to have lost weight on a diet, you probably recognize the struggle I describe. Maybe you even think you traded one obsession for another. I sure did. I went from being obsessed about losing weight to being obsessed about maintaining my new weight. In truth, nothing really changed. I was still obsessed. I found myself thinking about food all the time, calculating calories, Weight Watcher points, or fat grams. In my head, I was running a constant tally of every mouthful I ate. Every single step I took, I did so with the goal of either wanting to lose weight or as a desperate attempt to offset the food I intended to eat later. Food was my master, and I was its slave. Now, looking back, I realize all that time spent living under the burden of my food and weight obsession prevented me from living my life. I was waiting for my life to begin and looking outside myself for the answers. One day, while working out at the gym, my trainer Rob said to me, "Andrea, it's all in you." He said those words with the intention of motivating me to believe in myself. Now, I'm going to turn around and tell you exactly the same. It's all in you. I want to remind you that you have all the answers you need right inside of you. You just have to be able to quiet your thoughts long enough so that you can find them. I've learned that crazy thinking comes from being stressed, and that leads to crazed eating. Stress is the enemy that will always distort your relationship with food. It will keep you in patterns of resistance and fear that will continually push you to want to eat when you're not hungry. The importance of a piece of quiet. When you learn to make space in your day for a piece of quiet, you'll calm that inner turmoil. When you make your inner peace a priority, you'll be able to focus better and listen to the wisdom within. When you actually follow up and take action on whatever you learn, you'll feel more at ease. This new sense of peaceful ease will increase your awareness of gratitude. Along with gratitude comes appreciation and self-respect, with the bonus of becoming more compassionate with yourself. When you've developed a new habit of compassion and being gentler with yourself, you'll find that you won't be so quick to beat up on yourself with all the old negative Nancy chatter. Juicy Woman note: as I continue along this road toward making peace with food and becoming friends with my body, I know that my success and happiness rests on choosing to set aside time for me. Now, whenever I fall back on my old habit of emotional eating, I recognize the patterns and understand that I've forgotten to take time for myself each morning. Once I notice this, it's easy for me to just forgive myself and start over, renewing my commitment to make time for myself to enjoy a much-needed piece of quiet in my life. This newfound sense of inner calm keeps the relationship between food and my life in balance. I have to take time out to go within and listen to my body. Having the commitment to build that inner trust has enabled me to release the resistance I have around losing weight. Try it yourself. Create a new wonderful routine of self-care and make time in your day to enjoy a piece of quiet. See what miraculous changes occur. Why you must release your resistance. Let's look at this issue of resistance and how it affects your body. Two aspects of resistance are probably working in you right now, preventing you from having the body you want. You've most likely heard the saying, what you resist persists. In our context, this means as long as you refuse to accept the body you have today, it will never change. Here's what I mean. Do you call yourself names, endlessly criticize your weight, and pick yourself apart? These thoughts send a stream of negative commands to your brain which reinforce a fat and ugly self-image. When you think you're fat, you feel fat. And when you feel that way, nothing but food can make you feel better, right? This is because your frustration with your weight leads you to seek out comfort in the way that is most familiar to you. If you eat when you're upset, you'll continue to gain weight. The first aspect of resistance is your hurtful and negative self-talk. The second type of resistance you may be dealing with is fear of the unknown. For too many women, being thinner means being more sexual, having more success, being more confident, and in general, having a perfect life. This is a tremendous burden. I want you to know that as you change your relationship with food, you'll feel so much more in control of your life. The place to begin is where you are now, accepting the body you have today. This is going to require compassion and forgiveness on your part, and I'll teach you how to get there. To release any resistance you may feel toward getting thinner, you have to take a leap of faith and make it okay to be the size you are today, just like I did. I like to say that I found my perfection in the folds of my imperfection. This choice to be okay with myself now, as I am, no matter what, was what I needed to end the ravenous hunger that drove me. To break free of those desperate cries of wanting and longing, I had to lower the bar and change my goal. I realized that as long as I hated my body, I would never really be able to stand by myself, loving me exactly as I am, warts and all. After spending so many years being my own worst critic, I realized it was time to stop. I changed my goal from losing weight to finding ways to be happy and accept my body as it was right then. This meant I couldn't wait until later to be nice to myself. I had to start being kind and gentle and appreciative of my before body so that I could pave a path of love for my after body. How about you? Be honest. If you lost weight in the past, did it really calm your inner turmoil and solve all your problems? Or did you just kind of switch obsessions like me? What will it take for you to be okay with yourself right now? Take back your power. The one thing I've learned through this whole experience is that you always have a choice. It may not seem like it, but you do. By sharing my 7-step reclaim system, I'm going to teach you that food is not the enemy. Stress is. If you're not looking at what's bugging you and taking responsibility for making yourself happy in life, you'll continue to abuse food. Wouldn't you agree it's time to take back your power? Have you heard the saying, it's impossible to love someone while you're judging them? This applies to you, too. As long as you hate yourself and put yourself down with nasty self-talk, you can't ever become your best friend. Resentment and blame you harbor toward yourself or others will always back up on you. Repeat after me. Resentment strips you of your power and therefore makes you absolutely powerless. Being nice to yourself through choosing self-acceptance is the first step toward creating change. Isn't it time to end the war you've been waging on your body through endless dieting, deprivation, and self-hatred? After all, how has being mean to yourself been working out for you? Where have all the years of playing the body-hating games gotten you? Have they made you thinner, encouraged you to feel better, bucked you up when you were feeling down? I doubt it. My mother used to say, you catch more flies with honey than with vinegar. The same is true for being nice to yourself. Change the way you communicate with your body by learning to speak to yourself with love and gentleness. After all, if you plant a seed and do nothing but stand around and yell impatiently, waiting for it to grow, it'll seem like it's taking forever. Your yelling is not going to get you any closer to reaping the harvest. However, if you tend lovingly to the seeds, water them often, fertilize them when necessary, and give them plenty of sunlight and care, you'll have a beautiful, abundant garden. The changes you'll be making by using this book are internal. And just like with seeds, you may not be able to see the results of your work immediately. However, once they take root and become habits, not only will you notice the difference in your body, but all throughout your life. The mind-body connection. Let's get down to the nitty-gritty. Your body is made up of a network of communities of cells constantly in communication with each other and the world around you. If you're overweight and struggle with negative thoughts about your body, not only are you probably eating to soothe the pain, but your body is releasing stress chemicals. It's simply operating under the primordial fight or flight mechanism. Overeating is a warning sign that your body is out of alignment with its natural ability to balance and heal itself. Signals are when you feel bad, angry, sad, resentful, and generally unsettled. If you're suppressing your needs and pretending that everything is hunky-dory when it's really not, the pain will only get stronger. You've probably heard your body's messages urging you to pay attention, yet you were unaware of what they really meant. Perhaps you've been ignoring them for years, hoping, they'll just go away. But they don't. As one of my mentors, John Felito, says, emotional discomfort first comes in a whisper, then a scream, then a shove on the shoulder, and ultimately a frying pan. Something is hurting you, causing you to eat compulsively and think about food when your body is not actually physically hungry. The same thing is causing you to resent the body you have and wish you could change it. Your feelings of unhappiness are telling you that something is wrong and off balance. So, how do you turn it around? How do you see past the subconscious programming that's been poisoning you and find the source of your pain? It's not enough to think positively. That's akin to putting perfume on a pile of poop. Eventually it begins to smell and you fall back on your old stinking thinking. You have to change the underlying emotions. If you don't, the emotional and physical discomfort will remain and eventually get worse. Try it. Exercises to dig your teeth into. Years in the trenches of the business world have taught me that if you want to remember something, write it down. Similarly, my training in NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, emphasized that if you want to make an indelible impression on your brain, create an experience. As your coach, I'm going to help you challenge the ratty and fatty beliefs that have been keeping you overweight. I've learned that if you want to get control over what you're eating, you start by changing what you're thinking. In this book, you'll have a ton of opportunities to put what I say to the test. Since we learn best by experiencing, I encourage you to try your new tools out as you read along. I'll provide try-its, which are exercises for you to practice right then and there. From time to time, I'll also share more of the Juicy Woman notes you've already seen. These are tidbits I learned on my way to making peace with food and becoming friends with my body. I want to share them with you to make your journey easier. It's my hope that my goofs can be your gain. The first step toward creating change in your life is to become aware. I want you to become cognizant of what is stuck in your mental programming that causes you to act out in ways that don't support you. Following my try-its exercises will give you that awareness. I recommend you use a notebook or create a new folder on your computer that you will dedicate specifically to completing the exercises throughout this book. Each time you do a try-it, a wink and a nod to my beloved days as a Brownie Girl Scout leader. Record it in your notebook or folder. Be sure to write down the name and description of each, and then try it. Juicy Woman note. Consider that just like a good mutual fund, in order to get something out of this process, you have to first put something in. By deciding to read this book, you are making an investment in your happiness. By actually doing the try-its, you're doubling your rate of return. Try it. Who's in control here? Make a list of every single part of your body you don't like, feel critical of, and are embarrassed by. Then, next to each body part, write what you would like to say to it. For example, you may write butt. Next to butt, write something like, I hate you, you disgusting, fat, flabby butt. I wish that I could take a butcher's knife and slice you up. I'd cut off a few chops and roasts and still be able to feed a family of 4 with plenty left over to fill my jeans. Write what you feel. Weird, huh? Well, I want you to start connecting with how you honestly feel about your body. Angry? I bet. Despite what you've been told, anger's good. Heck, feeling your feelings is good. But for now, let's deal with anger because it's pretty easily accessible to most people. When something pushes our buttons, we can get pretty hot under the collar, can't we? If you're like me, you may have a tendency to sit on your feelings and push down your anger until you feel like you're apt to explode. Hiding your feelings by playing games of trying to look in control when you're not, and doing things like clenching your teeth and saying, I'm fine, when you're really not, isn't healthy for so many reasons. The least of which is because the stress of whatever you're feeling will most likely cause you to overeat. To give you an outlet to relieve your stress so that you'll be able to enjoy the clarity of listening to your inner wisdom, I want you to get in touch with your anger and any other negative or overwhelming emotions you may have. Doing so will flush away all the crud that's dammed up in your system. This crud is fermenting in your body and causing a disconnection between you and your body's inner guidance. In the section on coping with your stress, I'm going to teach you how to make those feelings work for you. It's this pent-up energy held in your body and keeping you stuck that makes you feel afraid and perpetually believing you are less than the wonderful person you really are. Juicy Woman note. The most important takeaway I want you to get from this book is that we teach people how to treat us, and it's never too late to change. Throughout the chapters, I'll share different aspects of my story, demonstrating the truth of this statement. If, like me, life has taught you that you're just a pretty face and your value rests on the size of your thighs, your golden locks, or your flat stomach, you'll learn to judge yourself harshly, discounting nearly every true asset you have. It's those painful run-ins with nasty critics, fat phobics, and abusive people that have most likely hurt you and kept you feeling uncomfortable in your body. I know for a fact that when people put you down enough times, telling you that you're not good enough, pretty enough, thin enough, or any other enough you can be, you start to believe it. Their mean lies become your stories, and those stories attract more of the same nasty, ugly reality. Because face it, deep down, you don't believe you're worthy of anything else, do you? In my opinion, that's the real fat that's been keeping you fat. If you're putting yourself down and hating your body, there's a good chance you learned to do it from someone who first did it to you. You've been walking around with their voice in your head, haven't you? My experience has taught me that if you're a chronic emotional eater, the problem is not food. It's easy to say, well, I just love food and I have no self-control. But as true as that may feel to you, it's not the real truth. Liking food may account for being an extra 20 pounds or so overweight, but if you're dealing with a larger amount of weight or find yourself struggling much, much too hard to keep it off, you're eating for a reason other than just enjoying the taste. Janine Roth is an international teacher, speaker, and writer of best-selling books on emotional eating. Her belief is that we eat the way we live, and all of us have exquisitely good reasons for overeating. Perhaps you've heard the saying, the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. To quote Janine, our relationship to food, money, love is an exact reflection of our deepest held beliefs about who we are and what we believe we deserve. In order to break the cycle of compulsive eating and find out what we truly hunger for, we need to be curious and kind with ourselves. Janine calls this exploration process feeding your hungry heart. Here's why it's important for you to be more compassionate and kind with yourself and your body. Your body under stress. Einstein proved that everything in the universe is made up of energy, even our thoughts. These invisible particles of energy are called atoms and are constantly moving and vibrating. Scientific research has proven that our body is a low-level electromagnetically charged system. Every thought we think generates a flow of chemicals from the brain that either makes us feel better or worse. When the energy in your body is balanced, you feel good. This is your body's natural state. Anything other than this indicates your energy is out of balance. Stressful thoughts overload the body, creating a sort of short-circuit response, throwing your energy out of alignment. According to the ancient science of acupuncture, electricity is constantly circulating throughout our body in paths called meridians. When you experience stress, your body responds by shutting down and blocking the free flow of energy through these meridians. It's because of these energy blockages that you get hit with sudden cravings for food, and you eat to cover up feeling hurt or vulnerable or any other overwhelming emotion. The pain that triggers your urge to eat and obsess about food when you're not hungry comes from a time when you felt emotionally overwhelmed in some way and you used food for comfort to make you feel better. It's a conditioned response, similar to what the Russian scientist Pavlov proved when his dogs learned to salivate in response to hearing a dinner bell. In other words, it's a knee-jerk reaction, something done automatically without conscious thought. As an emotional eater, at some point your brain received the message, food equals comfort. This is why you've been struggling with compulsive eating. As long as your energy remains blocked, your brain will continue to associate food with comfort. This energetic distortion in your body is keeping you caught up in a loop, making it nearly impossible for you to will your way out of the undesirable behavior of binging.